Hello there! I'm Squire Callahan Ridgeborn, almost a battlemaster, always a wizard, and tonight we are joined by the triumphant return of Tyrant Asche Palantir to talk about being a Paragon Archer. Ash, welcome back to the
Hey,
show. I'm so
Callahan.
excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be back. I was one of the early attendees, and I've been catching just about every episode. So when you reached back out and you asked me to come back on, I was trying to be cool. Oh yeah, I guess I could make time for that. But I was pretty excited to come back. So, and especially with this, my most passionate project.
Yeah, you're definitely well known for your archery. That's the thing that I know you best for. So I'm super excited, and I'm really ready to dig in and find out what makes Archer tick, and maybe I can find out how I can stop being a pincushion so often. So
Or
I've got some new questions that we didn't ask last time, so we're just gonna roll through it and see where we go. All right. So
let's go.
how did you get started in Amtgard?
So I think I mentioned this in our last interview, but essentially I had a friend that I was like best buds with in high school that I hadn't seen in a few days. We hung out like every day or
Mhm.
something like that. And he comes and he's like, "You got to come over to my house." I went to this convention. I bought these foam swords from this game, and we just battled in his backyard for a few days. And he's like, "Yeah, they meet over at the park downtown."
Mhm.
I think I like we tried to build our own and like bloodied each other's noses with headshots from like unbelievably unsafe weapons. But I started in 2005 at a little shire called Maddox Keep, which is now the Duchy of Stormbridge in Louisville,
Yeah,
Kentucky.
I remember you telling me about that last time. How the parks merged eventually because they were close together.
There
Yeah.
was like one on either side of the river, and
Mhm.
eventually, after everybody was a member of both parks at some point in time, we voted to essentially come up with like a unified name. Some people are still salty or nostalgic about it, but culturally speaking, it was almost the same group the entire time, so it worked out.
What made you start playing Archer?
It was different than what I had done before. I remember several battle cries ago, I came up with the idea of doing like a crossbow only archer as like this radically different character than what I had played before. And it had some really I don't remember some really like cringy name like Ghost, but that was the year that I won the node game at Midgard's Battle Cry, playing like a crossbow only archer. I remember at the time doing it for like the meme, but it struck me how powerful specialty arrows seem when you have like a gun that can fire stop effects or destruction arrows, at 40 miles per hour at people with unlimited range as long as you're accurate enough. The gears started turning then. And I think that I finished up anti-paladin in the interim time period. So when it was time for me to sort of set a new goal, like Archer seemed to be the most different thing than what I had done so far. I was a Paragon healer, I was a Paragon assassin, and I didn't do any arching at all during the assassin journey, by the way. That was
Okay.
pure melee essentially. And then anti-paladin, of course, is a bruisery class. So the idea of not having spells or having any like sort of being an archery focused class when I wasn't that good of an archer, like I'd never really arched except for here and there because somebody let me borrow their bow. That was like, well, if I'm going to prove I'm good at everything, this class is next. There was a lot of
Yeah.
people, really good players, playing like druid with a bow at the time,
Mhm.
and no shade to them. People like Dark Badger, who sort of seamlessly mixed the casting and the archery. I didn't feel like me also doing that was going to prove something they hadn't.
Mm.
I noticed that before every class had archetypes, one of them in particular had one that wasn't a caster, and it was sniper. And you just don't see a ton of sniper players, so it was a challenge. I decided I was going to only ever play sniper, and that was going to be weird enough that if I could do it, then I would prove that I was like the best.
Okay, I gotcha. What made you fall in love with the Archer class, though?
Oh man, it's how angry everybody gets when you victimize them. And so like the 11th time you pin someone in like a 6-minute period, they start screaming at you. Ever since I've got this,
Mhm.
every time I've played it since then, people have actually been like, you promised you would stop. And Severish especially will catch me, at an event, and we'll see that I've got an orange sash on, in the fifth battle game, and he'll be heartbroken,
Mhm.
but those people, they have an institutional memory of just having to play a whole battle game where they're just constantly getting hit with specialty arrow effect. And I've gone through like a number of different, I guess, builds with the arrows that I keep in my quiver. And I think that the ability to simultaneously deal damage and select different like sort of amp guard effects at the same time really allows you to, if you're good, create like a double threat. You know what I mean? Anytime you are threatening to take the squishies of the world, right?
Right.
And just kill them. Right. An unguarded healer that's not paying attention, you can just kill them, right? But even if you don't, right, you will append some obnoxious thing on them that can sometimes have a life larger than it even really has. You know, when you pin someone for like the third time, every time you point an arrow at them after that, they realize that it doesn't, you know, normally you're like, oh, well, as long as it doesn't hit me in the chest or if I can block it or whatever, like the normal computer of archers doesn't apply to the sniper. You know what I mean? He could just tag my cloak and I'm stuck here and pro mag doesn't help. And it's a sorcery effect. It's there's just so many gaps that it wiggles through. But other than that, I actually fell in love with it because of the subtle support features that it comes with. Archer can wear 2 points of armor, and that means that you are constantly at an advantage against other archers. Because the one thing that you have that a scout and an assassin doesn't have is that you also come with a rechargeable men. And so if someone shoots you and breaks your armor, because you only wear 2, so every arrow is going to naturally break that armor, you can just mend it back. And you can essentially repeat this as long as you want. You know what I mean? Because you're never going to ever get pierced by other archers. And it's not like they're going to have a super special arrow because I have all the super special arrows. Right. You know, and so every exchange that we have is they wound my armor or I do something really annoying to them. So you're constantly outplaying the other archers. There's a little bit of a tension with druids just because, you know, they're druids and they come with all their class abilities. Right. But you're still going to mostly be able to out-arch them. The problem is they can just turn around and, like, icy blast you. But everything I've just said happens outside the typical casting range. And I think this is something that you may have experienced, is that most wizards and druids do not have the ability to immediately respond to what you're doing to them because I'm like 40 feet away, or I'm far enough away that I can sort of scamper out. You know, if you turn around and start calling for my death, you know, I'm already 25 feet away. Just you know, get away and whatnot. So the combination of those factors really started to make me fall in love with the gameplay loop of Archer.
Okay. I can see that. Trying to cast on archers seems to be a fool's errand in my experience. Even if you have the extension, they can usually get out of range because they're starting at that 25 to 30 feet.
And you wouldn't believe how well that synergizes with having enchantments. I've been playing melee again recently, and I forgot how easy it is to get dispelled when you have to walk up to someone. It was not unusual for me to spend an entire game with the same enchantments and not even ever dying. The whole game, same enchantments, never died once. I would lose games. Maybe I wasn't effective enough, or you know what I mean. But like, I would probably spent half the games I played during the whole like 2 or 3 years that I played against never dying once.
Wow, that is a record there. And that's just
Archer can slip out of game. They have an ability that lets them leave the game.
Yeah. Like, reload is kind of bananas in the way that it runs, but we'll get into that a little bit later. I've got a new question for you that you probably haven't seen yet. What fictional character best represents the archer class?
Okay, all right. So I will tell you what I felt like, rather than maybe like the whole class. There is a game. It's a little indie game. You probably never heard of it. It's called League of Legends. There is a character called Varus. He is like this demon character that has like the character is the bow, and like the body is like this sort of, you know, possessed god. Before people in the YouTube comments yell at me, I know it's like two guys that are fused together, but whatever. The character has to charge up shots, and the longer he charges up, the more damage they deal. And all of his other abilities are like, he fires an arrow that like pins you in place, or he fires like a bunch of arrows that land and slow you, or give you like you can't heal, like suppress you, whatnot. And I always felt like Varus when I was playing Archer. If I was going to say what fictional character most typifies archers in general, probably like Hawkeye from the Marvel movies, because he's always got these gadgets, right? Oh, there's an arrow that hacks your computer because I shot a USB drive directly into it.
Which
And
USBs are not that strong. Like, come on. Yeah, the that scene where he shoots the USB drive into the computer, I would have liked it a lot better if he had to pull it out and flip it over and then get it again.
and then when he flips it over, it still doesn't fit, and some crazy how the first original side is now the way it goes, even though we all know
Mm-hmm.
that yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Fire 3 different USB arrows.
That would be fantastic. Okay, what makes Archer stand out? Like, there's a lot of different classes that get bows. You got Scout, Assassin, Druid. What makes Archer stand out amongst all of those?
I mean, it's got to be the specialty arrows, right? Like
Oh yeah.
that's the class. I talked a little bit about how wearing armor is good, but I mean, scouts and assassins can wear armor, right? So the specialty arrows are everything for it. And for me, just to clarify, I've never played, or at least during this run, I never played the unarchetyped archer, so I don't have a lot of experience. My understanding is that it is more similar to like bow scout or bow assassin than what I was doing, which was charge times 3ing every arrow. But you are playing almost like a spellcast, where you have this limited pool of resources. And for those of you that don't play sniper, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding. This has been changed multiple times as well, but each individual specialty arrow has its own charge counter. So if I fire a pinning arrow, I can fire a destruction arrow without having to charge it. And then I can fire a poison arrow or a phase arrow or a suppression arrow. I can fire all along those without having to charge once. So you are internally keeping track of 5 different binary switches. Some of the arrows are more useful than others, but essentially, and I think I'm ranting because I think I low key. You said what features make the archer sort of effective, right? Is being able to have a solution for so many different things that is unlike every other class in the game. I mean, the phase arrow is like when it happens, and I've seen it. I have killed so many like druids and wizards that have shrugged off so many different things. Every now and then you'll run into like a pro mag pro proj wizard, and they're just doing whatever they want. You know what I mean? Or like light and soul, or a bard chanting Song of Deflection. And even though everybody knows they exist, because nobody's ever been like, what's that do? You know what I mean? No one's ever confused about what the phase arrow does. It's just so unready for it. And I would say the general reaction is, got me, wow, phase arrow, nuts. And so it's got to be the specialty arrows, because each of them is so unique and so impactful in ways that no other abilities in the game are.
Do you think that some of the archer identity has been degraded because Scout gets pinning arrow now and Assassin gets poison arrow?
No. One, poison arrow is useless. Hear me out. What does poison arrow do?
It just is wounds kill, and you're already hoping for a torso shot. So I agree with you.
Well, hold on.
Okay. Yeah.
So you say it's wounds kill. Let me tell you what a poison arrow does. A poison arrow is a normal arrow, except in one circumstance. If it hits an unarmored limb of an already not wounded person that isn't immune to death, that doesn't have protection from projectiles. In every other scenario, it is a normal arrow.
That's a hyper-specific situation there.
Yeah, and so in almost every other scenario, when I'm trying to figure out what arrow I want to shoot, almost every other option is better. Now, there are people like Kiba, who is an amazing archer, that have conjectured like a perfect storm scenario when you might want a poison arrow. Like everybody's bunched up on a bridge and they all have unarmored legs, and maybe if you like fired an arrow and it skipped off a bunch of shins, like maybe a bunch of people would die. He says he's done it before, but he also hates poison arrow, so he's not an advocate for it. But the cost isn't in should I fire a better arrow sometimes. It's why would I own a poison arrow? Because I have to carry all these arrows. Especially with sniper, you're not allowed to take regular arrows. So the arrows that I take are so every poison arrow I put in the quiver is not a pinning arrow. It is not a phase arrow. Right. Why would I want it? As far as scouts having pinning arrow, good for them. They can have it takes their whole person away.
Yeah, they trade the whole person for a pinning arrow. And then with the hunter, they can go up to 2 pinning arrows.
Oh, I suppose they could, but okay, but if you play hunter and you get rid of the whole person, you're crazy. So I mean, that's not true. I can imagine a scenario hunter getting the rechargeable charge times 3 hold person is like one of the key hallmark features of hunter. So if you did it just to get a second pinning arrow, you must really like arching. You would really like archer. You should play archer.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm really curious, which specialty arrow do you like the best?
Which is my favorite child. How dare you? It's got to be pinning arrow. And for those of you that were there at the start, briefly, all I took was pinning arrow. I had like 22 pinning arrows. I slowly figured out that was not the most optimal setup. Pinning arrow has it all, man. Well, one, it's an arrow. Right? Armor breaking, kills you if it hits you in the torso like a regular shot. It carries a really annoying effect that has some subtle advantages that a lot of people don't consider. Okay, so when you're frozen, you're out of the game, right?
Right.
But you're invulnerable.
Correct.
So it's like you get to take a little break. I think there's like a subtle cultural thing where you're supposed to be like, frozen, I'm frozen, to try to get your like teammates to pay attention to you when they should be, releasing you. But when you're stopped, you're like fully in the game still, which means that the CC that's happening to you is something that is actively making you easier to kill without providing you any advantage to not being killed. Unlike froze, opt is an effect that most people actually don't have like a ton of experience dealing with, because like half the classes in the game are pro command, so they don't have to deal with being stopped by hold person. Most people who would otherwise take hold person on their list just kind of don't. So you're getting hold person from like scouts and assassins, who half the people who play assassin aren't casting hold person anyways. They're sneaking up behind you and stabbing you in the armor like 7 times. And so getting hit with a stop effect from sorcery, which I feel like is the hardest school to sort of naturally find an immunity from, that is hitting you like, that is not a verbal, so monks aren't immune to it unless they block the arrow. Yeah, it causes an unusual situation for people. On top of that, you start to soak up resources from support classes. How many releases did you take? Is it worth unstopping someone, especially if that person's not in immediate danger? It stops charges when you have like 3 or 4 people that have broken through your lines and you hit the main tank and the shield with the pinning arrow. Boom. Oh, I can't move. Okay, well, sometimes the breakthrough period to like get through a line when the line has sort of routed backwards is only a few seconds long, and you can stop a whole charge just by taking the lead guy out of the picture. Sometimes the charge itself is the sort of thing that is being led by like one influential person, and pinning them will cause all of the people, even if they could do it without them, to sort of lose confidence in their ability to deal with it, and they'll stop. Pinning can cause someone that is not in engagement range to stay out of engagement range. Oh, if I pin someone like 35 feet that way, then they're just stuck there when they should be like running across the field to do an objective. Speaking of doing objectives, somebody running away from me with the flag that gets tagged in like the arm by a pinning arrow doesn't get to, one-armed get the flag back to the capture point. No, he's pinned now. So there are just so many scenarios where being stopped sucks. And to have it tied with such an unusual resistance means that most people you shoot with a pinning arrow are going to be vulnerable to it. The other thing is that unlike hold person and like, obviously entangle exists, right? But like most people who throw in spell balls around are throwing ice balls. And of course, spell balls have their own weakuses compared to being shot out of a bow.
Arrows are way stronger than spell balls, just for it always will go straight, and it can go much farther. And you got the surprise distance can be really effective too, because you just.
And sometimes you can gamble on a shot that you probably can't make most of the time. But like, when the aforementioned guy running with the flag, nobody else is going to reach him. He's like 18 and has infinite stamina, and he's running away from you. What's going to happen? Well,
hit
just
him with
maybe
the old Hail Mary and see what happens.
Right. Tony Romo, it's just got so many uses, and I don't want to make my other kids feel bad, right? Like Destruction Arrow is godlike. You have so many scenarios where if pinning someone doesn't make them slow down, blowing up all 6 points of their chest armor like 9 times in a game absolutely will. Phase Arrow, as we previously discussed, like it's peeling away people's enchantments without having to dispel them or get close enough to cast a spell on them. There are so many wizards that it's almost impossible to get up and cast a spell on them, either because they'll break con you or outcast you, or their line is just so strong. And so the only way to take out someone that's like heavily enchanted and just destroying the other supports from the back line is to hit them with a phase arrow.
Well, and you can deal with slippery targets with those phase arrows because they're
especially. Yeah.
Like
No,
it,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
this is your interview. You interrupt me whenever you want. I want to know what you think.
For sure. People just don't expect it, like I said before. But yeah, to sort of loop back around, pinning arrow has to be the best arrow, for sure.
Right. And as we previously established, poison arrow, that's just the worst. It's the child you don't want to bring to the field.
It can be useful, as we discussed, since I get 5 different arrows. You know what I
Right.
mean? If I somehow ran out of, needed to fire arrows so quickly that I just needed an arrow to fire while I was recharging. Because keep in mind with sniper, and this is sort of, I'm sort of glazing over this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That every time I fire the bow out of battle, I pause the rest. I take some time to catch my breath, returning my feeding power to aiming my dark star out of battle, pause the rest. I take some blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
You know, a cast times 3. I have to stay still. I have to, yeah, I have to follow the rules for the charging can't. But the secret sauce is I don't know how to fire a bow very quickly anyway. You know, I see people like Kiba and back in the day Duriel doing some crazy like Mongolian loading where they're like firing arrows, you know, every 1.8 seconds, and I just never learned how to do that. I think I have 2 orders of the marksman because I'm just not a very good marks person. You know, and so to sort of counteract that, I learned how to say the charging can't really fast. You know, I always have. So
Okay.
and I gotta figure out who I'm gonna shoot next. Oh, and I gotta knock the bow and get it ready. You know,
Yeah.
and so
You're
yeah.
slowing down your speed, but you're getting more value out of every shot.
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
So I do want to talk about phase arrow a little bit, just because, like you said, it's something that not a lot of people are seeing a ton, and I think that's because you only can get one if you're not playing sniper.
I don't know what that's like.
That how many phase arrows are you packing?
I truly cannot relate to that sentence. I just want to be clear here. Like,
it feels so
I
suboptimal to not take sniper just because phase arrow is so good, and then suppression arrow, I feel like, is also really strong.
maybe it's because I'm not like a marks person by default, but most archers really resent having to do the charging camp before they shoot. So that's like a deal breaker for them. And I got Kiba to play sniper, and he was like, I can see why you do this. Like, I can see the advantages. Like, when it's working, it's great. It's not for me. He wants to like run around and like, you know what I mean, like shoot people while he's running away, and you know,
Yeah.
and reposition, and he's so accurate that he and maybe this is it. He's so accurate that like missing a specialty arrow is not something that happens very often. And so I miss shots all the time. You know what I mean? But I've got like 17 more pinning arrows, so who cares? Your question, how many phase arrows do I keep? 4 is the most I've ever run at the same time.
Okay. All right. When you're now, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, you also carry 2 short swords when you're playing
Yes,
archer.
yes, I do.
Being able
I
to
have
switch.
yeah.
Like,
So I
yeah.
have a back brace that was custom made for me
Mm-hmm.
that holds 2 swords, and it's like a little leather thing that was designed by Haliax, and I think TB also contributed to this. And it holds my swords, so I can just drop my bow and rip them out like a movie. And I think I interrupted your question.
I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
that specific thing. Switching from bow to melee so quickly is part of, I would think, why you haven't died as an archer very much, because especially with the sniper archetype, being able to run down the snipe when they're stuck in that reload pattern, if all they have is pinning arrow and they have to recharge it times 3 before they can shoot it again, you dodge or have somebody tank the first one and then you can run in, but you've got the backup melee that you have available.
Correct. And I would run offensive enchantments. My favorite enchantment stack that I would ever have was I wouldn't wear the armor, and I would take Iron Skin. I would take a view weapon. So I would be pro flame. I would have wounds kill on the swords, and I would 2 points of ancestral armor, which I could mend because I have a rechargeable mend. Self-sufficient.
Established, you're not afraid of the charging can't, so that's just
Nope.
so much value.
Charge times 5. Yep. Yeah, and Pew Weapon was really good. I really enjoyed Lycanthropy when I could get it. Because I'm mostly war armor, the sort of abilities that I would sort of seek out are things like Void Touched, which gives you armor breaking. It gives you pro sorcery, pro death, pro spirit. And there's a lot of like value as well in things like, and some of these are going to come across as like suboptimal, but sometimes you're just asking random druids for enchantments, right? And some of them will things, like poison from a druid, they get it really low. If you're only melee fighting like 3 times in a game and you whip out your swords and you couldn't find anything else more useful and you just eagle flap some guy in the legs and wounds kill him, like it only worked the once, it only had to.
Right.
Getting things like Flame Blade, doesn't seem like the sort of thing you would give to an archer. And maybe this is like my battle master privilege,
Hmm.
but getting the ability to have all my equipment be immune to flame and have all my weapons be crushing, breaking. So when I whip out the things and all of a sudden it's break, crush, break, crush, break, crush, break, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that kind of that kind of experience creates like a future hesitancy for people to want to charge me at all.
Yeah.
They have a couple of bad times, and then you're just the archer that they know is going to give them a problem. And because
Hmm.
you can just wear armor, even if you don't get a cool enchantment, if you're playing at your local park, it's like a 5-on-5, and you don't have anything special. Just having like the full body Gambison, 2-point Gambison, you can get on Amazon for like $80,
Yeah.
and the fact that you can just whip those swords out and fight means that at any point you are essentially fulfilling that same role that like an assassin or a scout can. Maybe like a great value assassin, don't get me wrong, but you can't sleep on the archer's ability to effectively engage in melee combat.
Absolutely, especially with the new archetypes, but we'll get into that in a minute. So, are there any weird rules interactions that Sniper ends up doing?
Okay, so and I want to make sure we've certainly changed the rules a lot in the last like year or
Oh
so.
yeah, it's been crazy.
So I want to double check myself here real fast. But the funniest one that I dealt with during my sort of my Paragon run was the Bard ability, Song of Deflection. Now I'm gonna read Song of Deflection like very carefully to you.
Okay.
Okay, so they changed this. Got it. So it used to say that the damaging effects of this of projectiles didn't happen to you, but it never gave you immunity to the magical effect or the non-magical effects of specialty arrows.
Oh,
So
okay.
you could be like pro mag with attuned and singing a song of deflection, and I could still pin you by shooting you with a pinning arrow.
Okay. They wouldn't take any damage, but they'd still be pinned.
Correct.
And now I believe they patched that out so that it
They did.
protects them from the whole effect.
That's why I wanted to look that up, because I wanted to avoid the brutal YouTube comments of people telling me that I was wrong, and I knew it. But yeah, as far as like weird interactions with charging, I mean, you can't move your feet, right? So
Right.
you have to be like really careful. Paladin does this really fun thing where he plays a regular archer,
Hmm.
and he'll knock a phase arrow and go pinning arrow, pinning arrow, pinning arrow to try to like get someone to, and he can just say it as many times as you want, and then right when they charge him, he says phase arrow and releases the phase arrow. And I can't do that when I use the incant. The ability is expended, and
Right.
so if I say pinning arrow, it's done. Like
Right.
I gotta use it. So you can't change your mind as a sniper. You kind of gotta do it. As far as like rules interactions that benefit me, oh boy, Song of Power. There's a charge times 3. So a bard nearby doing Song of Power, charge times 1.
Yeah. You almost want to
Yeah.
get yourself a little trailer to haul the bard around, never stopping.
Well, my old squire and now new knight of battle, Twilis, would jump scare me, would just come up behind me and empower me, or confidence me rather, and I wouldn't know that they were there, and they would sneak up behind me and imbue me with confidence, and I'd be like, oh, thank you,
Yeah.
and go for it. Weird interactions with sniper that are not cool for me. Break con means I'm not allowed to play.
Oh.
Yeah, if
You
I'm
can't
suppressed,
charge.
I can't shoot anything. Because all of my arrows are ability. If you cast Undead Minion on me, I'm literally just a worse monk in every single way. Or the old Undead Minion, I guess
Right.
the new one is.
The new one doesn't suppress you anymore, so that's not so bad.
Yeah, when you come back to life, you're suppressed for 30 seconds. So,
But they
but
can release
it's,
it.
sure, yep.
I got to
Yeah,
play
they're
as an
healers,
undead
so.
minion wizard, and that was bananas.
But yeah, like, so there's a lot of little things, and people, to their credit, started figuring me out a little bit. I had a lot of wizards suppress aura me, which is naturally a 50-foot spell, and that was really annoying when it happened. And I think that was one of those things where I'm not really allowed to complain, because I spent so much time sort of abusing like unknown or like little known, things, like a guy just carrying around 24 pinning arrows, that when I in return, and he got suppressed like 17 times during a game, I had just to remind myself that I was soaking one for the team, just in the same way that a warrior or a paladin has to soak 9,000 ice balls for his team.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other weird interactions that anything where you go out of game is sort of strange. So reload, and I do want to talk about reload. Get on my little reload corner here. Reload technically says that you're not allowed to go within 10 feet of other players. Right. Or enemy players, rather. I think every single archer and most reasonable people read that as meaning you shouldn't impede combat, because reload sort of effectively doesn't work if you hard align yourself to those rules.
Mhm.
How am I allowed to? Because like on a Kingdom Field where it's like 80 versus 80, people are just standing around everywhere. And if I'm never
Yeah.
allowed to go within 10 feet of them, I can't get my arrow. And so I started at the beginning asking Reeve, do you mind if I go grab that? I'm not allowed to, but can I just go over and grab those arrows? And they'd be like, sure. Or I'd be like, hey, can you grab those? I'm not allowed to be within 10 feet of a new player. And it graduated to full on, like nobody cared. The entire time I was playing Archer, nobody once complained that I
Mhm.
was within 10 feet of them, as long as I didn't impede combat. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
possible that I technically cheated along the way many times,
I
but
think that's a
uh,
cultural house rule that doesn't count.
yeah,
Like
right.
it makes the ability unusable, and it
Yeah. And I think that it's like the spirit of the law rather than that. Now,
yeah.
if somebody had said, hey, you're not allowed to be here, I'm an enemy player and you're within 10 feet of me, I would have been like, sorry, you're right. Will
Mhm.
you hand me my arrows? It's but
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
and I think part of it is like you like when you're dead, you're also not supposed to do that, And
right,
like when
yeah,
I'm dead, I want my spell balls back. So it'd be
right.
very hypocritical of me to tell you you can't get your arrows, and then I want to go get my spell balls, or my light throwies, or my javelin, or my rock, or whatever your class
You're
is
allowed to
flinging
pick up
around.
your stuff when you're dead, are you not?
Yeah, but you're technically not
You
supposed to
can't go
be.
within. You can't like intervene in combat and stuff like that.
Yeah,
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 it's sort of like if you're in the woods and it's just you and one other player, you know, and that player points at you and says, "Wizard," blah 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 blah, and you're the only human that could possibly be the target of that spell, and there's nobody in like 400 feet. You know what I mean? Like every time this happens to me, I will take the spell and be like, "Hey, just so you know, like that's not a valid sort of descriptor. I'm gonna take it. You know what I mean? But like, you should be like this wizard or wizard with the hat. You know what I mean? Like it's like, but like people are like, that's not a valid descriptor. Like
hmm
it drives me
hmm
nuts. Even though they are correct. You know what I mean? I think that's correct. But
Well, and
if there is
there's no like hard and fast line that sets what descriptors can be. And so you can get pretty vague with descriptors. Like,
I think they actually also clarified that recently to be more specific. But I've always really liked this wizard, even though I think it doesn't meet the requirements
hmm,
of the description. Wizard
I'm gonna
I'm
look that
pointing
up
at.
real quick because if I can say
I don't
wizard
think
I'm pointing at that,
I'm almost certain it doesn't. It's like you have to use like some kind of description of what they're wearing. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
because I'm pretty sure I can't just yell clothed wizard and call it good.
Right. No, there is like rules for it,
Yeah,
but I've always interpreted them, and most people that I have cast spells on have interpreted it to mean like as long
here
as you have provided a sufficiently clarifying, you know what I mean, text, then you're probably fine.
yeah,
Does anybody know the rules for this game? Silas would have them. He would know.
he would know right off the bat. As message
Oh
said.
yeah, Seb for sure.
He would know. He'd be able to tell me where in the book it is too.
Oh
But
yeah,
I can look this up
targeting.
later. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
This is after
Oh
the
my god, I
talking
found
point.
it.
Oh, you
I
did?
found it.
Oh yeah. Where?
Yeah,
What page
abilities
is it?
used at a range greater than touch require the target to be indicated by name. If the name of the target is not known, or if the casting player prefers, they may instead point at the target with a free hand and say two descriptors for the target, such as their class or the color of their tunic. So,
So
I
any two
think technically,
descriptors.
yeah, this wizard.
You could technically yell that person.
And I think that you obviously in the same way that I believe that not taking a spell when you're alone in the woods with a wizard is kind of like bad behavior. I also think that not sufficiently describing it, even if you technically meet these requirements, is also bad behavior. So I will often say this wizard or the wizard I'm pointing at if they are in fact the only wizard in the woods with me. In every other
Right.
scenario, I will either say their name or like wizard in green, just so they know that I'm talking to
Yeah.
them.
Well,
But we
and
have gone off track.
the rule of thumb that I always go with is they need to know it's them that I'm targeting.
For
Right.
sure.
Like if
Yes.
that sets a good level of vagueness for me. It's like, did
Yeah.
you know it was you? Did I know it was you? Then we're perfect.
For sure.
Okay. I want to ask you about suppression arrow. So
Okay.
I spent a lot of time thinking about Amp and I feel like suppression arrow might be a really good anti-healer kit.
In truth, I tried it.
That's what I wondered.
I have tried it, and what I have found time and time again, it is just so easy for another caster to kind of like fix it. You know what I mean? Because they can still run off and do other things. Suppression arrow was only really useful for me, I found, in setting up really obnoxious combinations, right? And to your credit, I think you have an idea here where I would pin someone and a healer would run over to them and I would suppress them. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
okay. So
yes.
you're comboing off of that. You're drawing the healer
Yeah.
up, and then you're suppressing because they've got those medium shields, and those medium shields just look like
Correct.
such juicy.
You can shoot them. They're so easy.
You can't
Yeah.
miss.
Boom. Clack. Yeah. You can't miss. You essentially can't. Right. But what I found was I was setting up these things, and it kind of goes back to the why would I carry a poison arrow if I could just carry another pinning arrow? The times that I made it work were so few where I felt like I had used my resources correctly that I just stopped carrying them to a certain point. I would carry like one. The times where suppression arrow actually ended up being very useful was against super slippery wizards that wore giant capes. So, like I would tag them in their giant billowing robes, and I'd be like, "Oh, is it golfing? Gotcha." You know, back when barbarians had fight after death, shooting them with suppression arrows so they couldn't activate that was the idea. But I'm almost certain that death itself clears all of those. No, it doesn't. No, it only clears like a hold and
no, because if they're
like
stopped
that, yeah.
when they die, they're still stopped. After death specifically said that states remained as well as wounds.
So. You stun them, and like you could. That's why brutal strike works as well, I suppose. But yeah, you could suppress them, and they couldn't fight after death. But then like you start asking yourself, like, was that more effective than a pinning arrow?
Probably not.
Probably not. You know, and so the suppression arrow kind of works in smaller games too. You could set up really obnoxious combinations where you like pin a bard, and as he's trying to release himself or herself or whatever, you suppress them, and then you load up another pinning arrow because it might run out of time, so you pin them, and then like you can casually victimize someone over a long period of time with several arrows, so there's nothing they can do to escape you. But once again, like using 4 or 5 arrows on someone to make sure they die is not like a super effective use of your time. You have the option, right? Like it's there, and so having the option is almost always better than not having the option. But at the end of the day, I swapped it out for more destruction and pinning and phase arrows.
Okay. Yeah, it felt like I never see anybody doing it, and so like even people who are just playing normal archer, that I don't see a lot of suppression arrow, so I figure there's got to be.
You know who suffered the most from suppression arrow? It was me, because who would get shot? There's this Grim Garrison named oh my god, I can see it's like Rom. Rom would shoot me with suppression arrows, and I couldn't shoot my bow for 30 seconds.
So suppression arrow is just the anti-sniper arrow at that point.
It sucks so bad because it wasn't that hard to hit me with bows. They were like, haha, point, and it would be like, oh, got me. Can't even mend the shot because I'm suppressed.
Yeah.
So
that seems silly. I like that. I've got this pet project to try to get suppression bolt to have.
Okay. Suppression bolt rocks. Sorry, you go on.
Oh, I want to improve suppression bolt by making it so that they are not only suppressed but also cursed.
Sounds awesome. Suppression bolt does not get enough play.
It does not, because it is it doesn't stop movement, like you said. It's easy to get released from, and you have to get released from it. 60 seconds without casting. If you're a caster, like if I'm hitting a caster with it, I'd rather have hit them with an ice ball or a lightning bolt or something that makes them hold still and stop doing things. But if you hit them with the suppression bolt and it cursed them, like, ooh, that might be worthwhile.
Do you know who can take suppression bolts? The locks can.
Yes, they can. That is one of the only times I've seen someone use suppression bolt is when they're playing Warlock, and it's like, okay, you're getting around your limitations, which I approve of, but it
feels like cheating.
It's such a
you're suppressed, and they also deal damage. So
they
like
do not.
They don't.
They do not.
Are you sure?
I am 99%.
See, I'm terrible.
As
suppression bolt.
I'm gonna be really embarrassed.
You're right. I'm wrong. Because
it's just because if it dealt a point of damage, then it would be worth trying for. Because that's the problem with suppression bolt is you hit someone with and if you bonk it right off their chest, you're like, oh, could have been.
It's funny how often like I am wrong about the rules, and I feel like maybe it's like the downside of playing so many different editions. You know what I mean? That like slowly they kind of blend together in my head. And usually it's like if somebody corrects me in the field and they're like confident enough, I'm like, oh, sorry, you must be right. Because what I was confusing it for was phase bolt, which
Yes.
deals damage.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So
The
my apologies. This is the part where the YouTube commenters may now rip me apart.
how dare you question my wizard knowledge?
I was wrong. I'm not a good wizard.
If it wasn't anything other than a wizard class thing, I'd probably just be like, yeah, that sounds right. I've done it before.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a hoot. So, okay. Now that we've established that suppression arrow is not the game-breaking tech that I hoped it would be.
It's okay. It's all right.
It's all right. I just like the idea of making the healers stop doing what they're doing for just a bit.
So I think that if you were gonna use it, right, and I've always been a fan of just like redlining any good idea to its conceivable maximum. I would just pack the whole quiver full of suppression arrows, right? Like just let's just do 20, you know,
See,
and every arrow I fire is a suppression arrow, and there may be some like break point where the amount of suppressed people on the field becomes like an actual real problem.
I just don't think you can do it with the recharge times 3, because I can recharge times 3 pretty fast, but I don't think, because Swift from my bindings that were released is faster than I can recharge times 3.
How many of those you got?
They max have 2 per life, but if you've got 4 healers over there, you've got 8 releases. That's a lot of arrows.
You don't.
Before you can.
This is a and I don't mean to sort of call you wrong here, but games don't exist in a vacuum.
That's
right?
true.
When you're doing these things, you were doing it, and everything else that is happening on your team is still happening, right? So every like annoying like ice ball that needs released is co-occurring at the same time as you suppressing everybody, and that's why the pinning arrow is so annoying, because the releases are finite. It's kind of, I mean, you have so many over the course of like a team, but you are draining that resource. And I think the difference between the pinning arrow and the suppression arrow is the pinning arrow like fundamentally stops combat, and the suppression arrow does not. And I already have a tool for fundamentally stopping combat and people that don't wear armor and cast spells a lot. It's called shooting them with the arrow. They die, you know. And then the phase arrow is fundamentally the healer killer, right? And I get it. Like, you know, you have the big healer with the big medium shield, and pinning him doesn't do a whole lot, right? Because he just releases himself, or she just releases herself. But suppression doesn't like really work that same way, because some bard walks up right behind that person and releases them. Or unlike the pinning arrow, they can just scamper off and get someone to fix it.
They can go find someone to do it. So when the pinning arrow, the reason it's more effective is they have to bring someone to you. Whereas with the suppression, they can.
And oftentimes people get pinned in like really like awkward places, you know, or places that become awkward, right? Like you were with all your friends, and then all of a sudden the tides changed, and they all fell back. And you can't. Yeah.
I've been in that spot where like, oh, I'll get hit in the arm with a pinning arrow, and I'm like, all right, and I'm dead now because I can't get away.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Right, like. My place
and it's also like a psychological thing too, because they're all trying to figure out who they should release, and you being stopped is like a medium tier problem,
right?
You know, like especially if you're not immediately in danger, and the way how quickly like things can change for you can oftentimes like be like you didn't expect that you being stopped would be a problem, but when it did, like the consequences of it come so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about teamwork with Archer. So
okay.
How can other classes best team up with Sniper?
Boy, wizards love Sniper. Pinning arrow, drag below. This is something that me and Twilis would do, not even on purpose. We wouldn't like go out there to do this combo, but like Twilis would be passing by me. I would pin someone, and they'd be like, "Oh, got him."
Yeah.
Arrows often wound people. Assassins can capitalize on that so easily. You know, oh, you're wounded? Coup de grace. Destruction arrow opens up so many opportunities for your melee fighters to then expose like a weakness in the line. If you have someone that doesn't have a hardened shield, and you blow up that shield with the destruction arrow, all of a sudden a previously sticky situation can get really a lot easier to deal with, like pole arms and stuff. And vice versa. You often rely on your teammates in order to solve problems that you as an archer are just not capable of solving. When people start massing a bunch of proprages or imbue shields, paladins with imbue shields are so tough for archers to deal with that you need to work with the team. Hi, you go get that guy's enchantments off and I will shoot him. There are teamwork elements to playing archer that I think most people don't consider, which is that your mend is not self-only. It is also rechargeable. And so you providing emergency mends to people who have lost their polearms, who have lost their shields, who have lost the last point of their chest armor is oftentimes better than having a healer do it if it's not an emergency, because I can just bring my men back. And that's not always going to be an easy option because it's charge times 5. Which of course, if you experience it, as most classes that get it, it will be charge times 5 as well. But that didn't cost me 2 spell points, and oftentimes I'm standing around anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, well, and that's a lot of resources to dump into, bringing back someone's armor that you might not have the whole thing for, because a lot of times
I have a vested interest in people with shields in front of me keeping those shields. That's all I'm saying.
All right, well, next time my shield gets broken, I'm coming to you.
I'll be there.
Okay, I did want to circle back and talk about destruction arrow a little bit, and I want to ask you about, because paladin getting imbue shield feels like the class that everyone's rocking right now. Well, AP is getting a lot of love with the new the void touch thing.
AP seems so strong right now.
And the void touch, does the void touch?
That's not even the one I run.
Does the void touch block specialty arrows effects?
No, it doesn't. Because void touch says it only blocks magical effects from the spirit, death, and sorcery schools. Okay. It does not. And I ran into this at Keep where I shot a guy, an anti-paladin, with a pinning arrow, and he said immune, and I was like, how? You know what I mean? And he goes, "Oh, I'm void touched," and I was like, "Oh, so and this most people don't know this, but that doesn't block non-magical sorcery effects." And that person, credit to them, was like, "Well, it's not a huge deal. I got released right away, anyways." And I was like, "It's funny that you say that because it does block release." You can't. So you couldn't have been released from it because you're immune to magical sorcery effect.
Oh, that's so funny. So only a scout can release them at that point because the scout releases EX. Okay.
Yep. So no, void touch does not stop that. Void touch does let you shadow step though, so that stops that.
Okay. So you already mentioned that you like getting enchanted as an archer. Give me the tier list. What's the top 5 enchantments to get as a sniper archer?
Oh gosh, top 5. Okay,
I'll settle for 3 if you only have 3.
No, I can do 5. Gosh.
Okay.
Number 1. Sleight of Mind. Because all of the enchantments that you get are so hard to dispel, having Sleight of Mind on top of it is just the absolute super cherry, where in the one tiny instance where someone finally got it off on you when you weren't paying attention, Sleight of Mind. You're never packing the super druid stack, you know what I mean, with essence graft, so you don't have to worry about your enchantments not being eligible for that. Beyond Sleight of Mind, there are so many good ones. Archer is so good at utilizing this because you are often filling holes rather than, because there's not a lot of spells that let you shoot better, right? So you're either filling defensive holes, you're filling offensive holes, or you're creating new opportunities for yourself. I'm going to do the 4 here in no particular order, if that's okay. So these are the top 4. They're all tied for second place. Iron Skin is just so good for giving you ancestral armor. It lets you ignore other specialty arrows. Ancestral means that the armor breaking effective arrows doesn't strip the location dry, so your mend becomes doubly effective. Pro Flame stops some really annoying stuff from happening, like getting your bow heated. It makes you a viable melee threat with that armor. Touch is super, super good. Not only does it come with an incredible set of resistances, you come with an escape, which is something that most archers do not have. It's a thing that they lack. I have to manually run away. You know what I mean? Archers that must charge abilities really benefit from being able to steal life from people. Although, and this is something that so crazy how this deep in the conversation we haven't gotten into. Snipers were given a new ability in the archetype sort of update.
Oh, what did they get?
And everybody got new archetypes, right? But sniper already existed, so I think someone felt like they had to hand them something. And let me find it real quick.
Oh,
it's called Momentum. Yes. So if I kill somebody with my arrow, I get it back, or I charge an ability, which is really good.
That's really strong. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
You can just
Void
chain all
Touch
this
lets me
stuff.
steal. Yeah, like let's imagine that I can just get like 7 or 8 kill shots in a row. You know what I mean? Like the whole downside. If I'm a good enough archer, the downside of sniper is now gone.
Right.
In practice, that's just does not really how it works. But it's always really nice to get a kill shot and be like, oh,
Mhm.
got that one back. But Void Touch also allows you to sort of circumvent that as well. Not only can you steal life, actually, and it's funny because mostly you're stealing life from your dead friends in order to get arrows back, but the escape and the various other things is really good. I think that Gift of Flame is really strong. It is a rechargeable heat weapon that also gives you pro flame. So not only do you get the benefit of the not being able to be heated, but you also have a new offensive option against. I mean, like, what's the stereotypical enemy of projectile casters? It's monks, right? Yeah, but what if you could just heat their weapon?
Yeah, that would be effective.
It's a charge times 3 as well, right? And so you're already charging constantly. So, you're already in the right mood to do so. And the last is probably Essence Craft, right? Not Essence Craft, Enlightened Soul. Just because, not having to worry about. Yeah, exactly. It's going to always top tier it. There are a couple of enchantment stacks that I think can get both are really strong. I used to run with the armor on tiers and imbue weapon.
Okay, that's a lot of points to put onto an archer that maybe it's 3 melee fights in a game. That seems honestly a little excessive for what you're doing.
Maybe, but what it meant was that I could charge into battle every time I needed. And maybe this is, once again, you get that battle master privilege, right? Where people would be like, you know what? Okay, I once the arrows were expended and everything was said and done, I could charge in, wounds kill, wounds kill, wounds kill, wounds kill, wounds kill, and once the front line dies, how many people behind them are now in danger of this Florentine nightmare, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and so you hit the line. You say it's 3 melee fights a game, but what if I told you it was 15 dead players in the most important parts of the fight?
Sounds worth it. Yeah.
The Phoenix Tears freezes you, brings you back up, and Phoenix Tears, most importantly, restores all of your armor. So when I pop out of the frozen effect, I am fully re-armored. I still have the wounds kill swords, and I can just do it again. If I don't get shattered or something, which I probably will. Another really good enchantment stack that I found was being Enlightened Soul, Praj, Sleight of Mind. I just get to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Like, no one can interfere. I ignore everything. Yeah, they can strip my armor off with the arrows, but whatever,
Yeah.
And then we have when I scrounge for enchantments, I will take almost anything. You know what I mean? If it makes it better. Silver Tongued is really funny because it enables some really interesting things to occur. You can swift mend people, right?
Okay.
But also, you can say, Swift, I knock my arrows to my bow, I let them fly, my quiver is low, now I pause to go reload, and you're out.
And that's, I think I heard that they had changed the reload in camp, and they made it simpler, but I don't see that here. So I don't think that that's correct.
The old reloading cant was much more suggestive. It said something like, I've blown my load.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. Reload is kind of crazy. It's the only thing that you can just choose to be out of game. I don't think there's another ability anywhere in the game that allows you to decide you're not playing for a little bit and take a break.
Technically, Song of Visit did, but
I think that just makes them insubstantial, but I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I've been wrong many times about Song of Visit.
Song of Visit cannot be wounded and is immune to all schools. My bad.
It's not quite the same. Yeah, this is a weird one that you don't see a ton. Yeah, it's... I dispelled someone that was singing Song of Visit a while back.
Which makes them substantial, I think.
Yeah, when it's removed, they become insubstantial, must move directly to their base. Upon arrival, they immediately end the effect as per insubstantial. Which was such a weird combo to happen, and I hadn't seen it before, just because I haven't had a ton of bards singing Song of Visit. So...
I had some crazy idea where I would throw myself somewhere, like self-cast shove or something like that, and then I would ambulant Song of Visit. And I never did this. This is like all theory craft. And then when you become stopped from Song of Visit, shove continues to move you because shove circumvents the stopped requirement. And when you arrive, you're waiting for someone to dispel you. So when you start to move back, you ambulant release yourself and turn around and kill all of them. Once again, this is kind of like what we were talking about with Suppression Arrow, where too many moving parts, right? At some point, it's just not worth doing.
I like the idea though. Yeah. Okay, So before we move on and talk about Archer, what weaknesses Archer has, I want to know, what does your normal loadout look like? What's going in your quiver for a Kingdom battle game?
So for a long time, I had 28 arrows, and it was 12 destruction, 12 pinning, and 4 phase.
Okay.
Over time, I like lost arrows,
Mm.
and they became broken, and so that amount of arrows eventually like got lessened, and I moved to 2 phase because I still needed some amount of pinning and destruction arrows, and I found that like a 60-40 split between pinning being slightly more than destruction and then having 2 phase arrows was the play. You got to have the 2 points of armor in all locations,
Mhm.
and you have to carry a sword. Why wouldn't you carry a sword?
Okay.
Preferably 2 on your back.
Yeah, you can have as many short swords as you want. This is the big thing that I think a lot of people are lacking at Kingdom is,
Right.
why aren't you carrying multiple weapons? If I'm playing, a melee class and it says I can have as many melee weapons as I want,
Especially if you have a bunch of Saladin's little utility things
yeah,
that can hold those on your belts that he sells for only 25. See your local Saladin for some Saladin's little utility things.
yeah, like why wouldn't you?
I mean, like even if you have to like do that thing where you like tuck it in your belt and it like
Mhm.
falls out like twice a game, like whatever.
See
Like
the
being able to
field.
like wiggle it out it's like so useful.
Hmm.
Also, you can carry a dagger.
Yeah,
Tie it to your wrist. I don't care.
have a
Carry
spare
something
shield. Like, what do you?
on your back, like whatever. Hand it
I've
to your
got
friends.
a like small shield that I can wear on my belt that I can
That's
switch
cool.
to if they blow up my big shield. You'll
That's
see it at
awesome.
the event in 2 weeks.
Yes, we will.
It's gonna be insane. I'm gonna play something not wizard, and I
I'll
think
believe it
that'll
when I
be
see it.
fun. It'll happen. It'll happen. Okay. Weaknesses of Archer. What is Archer as a class weak to?
Doesn't come with any natural immunities. Doesn't come with any defensive abilities other than reload, which is not really a defensive ability. Which is the only thing I could really comment on, is super weak to suppression effects. Pressing a sniper makes them not be able to play the game. They are weak to passive enchantments, like a warder can take 8 proprages and can take multiple persistence. So, a pair of warders can effectively make most of the team totally immune to everything you do.
Okay.
Snipers are extremely weak to imbue shield, which is a very easy and affordable enchantment. If you have enough support casters on your team, sniper can fail to leverage their ability to be annoying to effectively halt combat. So like very well stocked, responsive support characters can often take my like sort of gimmick away from me. And then you know what, archers, the biggest weakness is it's hard to shoot someone who's looking at you. So just awareness.
Okay.
Because I don't come with any offensive abilities in melee, and because I don't come with any defensive abilities, classes that can easily inflict those things can often derail me pretty effectively. Casting insult on an archer can be devastating.
Does
Bards
insult
can
block you from recharging your specialty arrow?
no, but it means I have to shoot some guy who's like 65 feet away from you with a medium shield
Okay.
that can release himself. So like, archers also sort of depend on stable battle lines, right? And so chaos doesn't suit them well. Snipers are especially poorly affected by this. If everything is going poorly for you, you can't save the game, right?
Mm.
So, if you're constantly having to run away, or if there's nowhere to stand, or if your battle line keeps collapsing, you're not able to impact the game as well as you normally would be able to.
Okay.
So chaos on your side is bad. Chaos on their side is great.
Okay. How do you overcome those weaknesses?
Positioning is really important. Positioning is kind of a double-edged sword. You want to make sure that you are somewhere close enough where your accuracy is not impacted by your distance, but you want to be far enough away that you can avoid spellcasters, other archers, getting stabbed, and so positioning is huge. Also, making sure that you target the important people with your abilities is just so important because, if your whole team is getting destroyed by a wizard that has enchantments on it, then your job is to hit it with a phase arrow so your line can recover and you can do the rest of your job.
Okay. How does Archer play differently at Park versus King?
At Kingdom, you basically have the luxury of standing behind dozens of people and shooting for the whole game. You don't have the same opportunity at Park. I think that the biggest difference, though, is that your specialty arrows or like a kill shot can radically transform a Park battle game. So, getting like a good shot on a good player in the chest with a destruction arrow when it's like a 5-on-5. And this has happened where I've shot TB, who's packing 4 points of armor in the chest at the very beginning of an encounter, radically changes the entire battle game. Whereas at the kingdom level, you are part of a moving machine. So if you are a
Right.
good archer at the park level, like a really good archer, you can make a lot of suffering happen. At a park level, you cannot rely on the idea of people not being able to get to you, though. You know, which I think is where a lot of archers suffer, whereas they don't really have a plan for when like a good fighter closes on them in melee, other than like maybe I'll pin them with my pinning arrow, right? But obviously that's not a huge issue for me because I will whip my swords out and whack them.
Right. Do you think that's why we see, I think, a lot more bow players choosing scout and assassin for those get out of jail free cards, or do you think that there's a
Yeah, or druid when you can just stone for him,
right?
you know, and yes, ultimately I do think that archers rely on better decision making. Scouts can shadow step, assassins can shadow step, druids can stone form, druids can ambulant icy blast you while they run away from you. Assassins can hold person you. Scouts can hold person you. They have other tools, and the archer has to rely on being in the right spot and making the right decisions before the problem happens, right? Because all those things that we talked about that druids and scouts and assassins can do, they're like reactive.
Right.
You know, oh, I'm being charged, I'll shadow step. Right? Whereas the archer's reactive response is running away. And even if I escape, the whole time I was running away, I wasn't doing anything useful, right? And if I'm at park and running away is like, if there's no safe place for me to be, then running away is not like a long-term good solution, right? Like, what am I going to run away to? The parking lot? Like, it's
Yeah. So okay, makes a lot of sense. You have to be a lot more proactive as an archer, especially the smaller the field, the more difficult it is.
correct.
Okay. What does the minimum gear look like if you're playing
You
archer?
have to have a bow.
What would you, like if someone's trying to start off as archer? What's the minimum number of arrows you say that they need?
So I've never played regular archer, but I have to imagine that if you're going to play, it's got to be like depends on if there's arrow sharing at your park. You can never share specialty arrows, and specialty arrows can never be shared to you. So I must always go get my arrows every time I ever play sniper, the ones that I personally started the game with. So in that case, I think the minimum number of arrows to play sniper has got to be like 14 to 18. I say minimum. It's weird. Like, do you want to have like 9 arrows and go pick them up for half the game? It's bad.
Yeah.
As far as what I would consider the minimum to adequately or competently play the class, you have to have armor, and you have to have a bow, and you have to have at least 14 arrows. Okay. Even 1 point armor. But
yeah.
If you can't have,
yeah, points, like almost the same in the meta.
Some thick gambeson, right?
Yeah.
If you're not wearing armor, play druid.
Okay. Have you done anything with the alternate archetype for artificer?
No, I haven't. I think it's interesting. It's one of those things where I wonder what the field position of this particular archetype is really for. So I get it. You have this massive repair ability, right? And you get the pinning arrows, and I'm just gonna go like glance real quick to make sure that I'm not wrong here. But my understanding is you get shield, you get greater mend,
small shield, greater mend twice per life recharge times 10. Mend is 2 per life recharge times 3.
Weapon shields don't consume a use of it, and then you get some specialty arrows to pick. I think this could work. I question whether or not this could possibly be more effective than a druid. It seems unlikely.
I've seen it at the like duchy level a bunch of times, and it seems good on medium-sized fields because being able to repair weapons and shields is just useful.
But one of the ways I get around only firing specialty arrows is I just take a bunch of them. You know what I mean? Like I have like 30 or 25 arrows. Only having like 8 arrows. You're right. Like on a small field where you just pick them back up and there's like a million people swarming around it. Maybe it would work.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical, but it seems playable, if that makes sense. It seems playable.
Right, that's fair enough. If you haven't played it, you haven't played it. I want to shift and talk about the Paragon board and being a Paragon Archer. What's something that an Archer player can really do to stand out to the Circle of Paragon?
I think one of the problems that archers have is that they see the whole game from their perspective, which is that they are constantly moving around. They are finding opportunities to hit critical shots. And if they are effective archers, they're seeing their success and they're not really seeing the total overall impact of of them on the whole battle game. And this is something that I think a lot of archers fall into a trap of, which is they get to have some real like highlight reel moments, maybe like 6 to 8 times a game, you know, where they really nailed some dude and stopped or killed a healer or something like that. But there's a reason that you don't see a bunch of archers in Bridge Wars, because the overall consistent impact of their participation is fairly small. And the overall support that they bring to the battlefield is fairly small on a small competitive field. If an archer wants to be noticed by the Paragon board, they need to be accurate, they need to be persistent, and they need to be relentless. I think that all too often archers spend so much time looking for their best shot rather than the best shot for their team. So if you can find one person who you can victimize over and over again, that's a power player on the enemy team, and you can leverage your archery skills to make that person just miserable the whole game, that's better than you hitting more excellent shots against people who weren't looking at you that might look better on a GoPro, you know what I mean, on your head.
Okay.
You have to think about the impact of what you're doing is and how it affects your team rather than how often you're hitting a shot that deals damage.
All right. Well, what advice would you give someone who's starting out as a level 1 archer?
Carry a sword. And it's funny. I remember back to our first interview when I was just like, learn to fight. But like, learn to fight. Carry a sword on your hip. Be aware that there are going to be moments where you are not going to have arrows or you're going to get charged by someone. The advice that I just gave about making sure that you're using your arrows to help your team and not just to get yourself a highlight reel of good shots. Understand that a less effective arrow that does something more often is oftentimes more effective than waiting for the perfect shot. And then from like a gameplay standpoint, solicit enchantments. Get yourself a blessings against wounds, you know, get yourself something that helps mitigate your weaknesses. All too often archers start, they don't have any armor. A blessings against wounds can stop like them not paying attention to some enemy scout just nailing them with a crossbow shot.
Mm-hmm.
They get to keep arching. Shoot people in the leg more often.
Have you ever taken an archery apprentice?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I have taken apprentices of every other class. Now, to be fair, I'm not that much of a... This is a much more recent Paragon than my other Paragons.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't know anyone that only plays Sniper. So if you're out there, hit me up.
All right. You heard it here, folks. If you want to learn to be the other sniper, get in the comments, get in the DMs. Let's make this happen. What is your next goal for Amtgard?
Man, I had it in my mind that I was going to play Pole Scout relentlessly until I got that done, but I broke my thumb. Actually, Amdare broke my thumb, and so it has certainly put a damper on that. I'm not sure at this point. I have a lot of different things that are bouncing around my head that I would really like to do. I have 9 masks, so a 10th would be 6. But, you know, I am in an interesting position where I am a triple belted knight. Most of the things that I have been passionate about, I have accomplished. It would be super sick to finally win some more tournaments. But from a class gaming perspective, which is mostly what your channel is about, I think you gotta always chase that 5th Paragon, and continuing the trend of doing something different, either Scout or Wizard's got to be next.
Okay. Well, if you ever want to come over to the dark side and go for that Paragon Wizard, I'd be super hyped to bring you back on the channel to talk about it again. Let's go. I'll talk to anybody about Wizard all day long. I know that you said yes before, but is it still okay for people to come talk to you at events?
Always.
Perfect.
Please.
Do you have any final advice for our archer friends before you go?
Right, Sniper, it's great. Try it. Don't be or do be a nerd. Try it. Get a bunch of arrows. You don't have to get covers for them. You can just get, look, hold on. You can just tie a red strip to it and write the word destruction on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes. It's a regular arrow.
Yeah.
Spend like $6 at your Walmart and tie the word pinning on a yellow strip to every single one of your arrows and try it like 3 times. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, a special thank you to Ash for coming on the channel again. It's been really fun to bring you back on. You were our 2nd or 3rd interview, and seeing the channel grow and seeing me getting better at interviews, I think we got a lot of good stuff out of you this time.
You're so good, Callahan. It is really my pleasure being here, and I was delighted when you re-invited me back. I hope that this project grows tremendously for you, and really I'm delighted to be here.
Well, thank you so much. To you, our viewers out there at home, if you've made it to the end of this video, please subscribe for more battle gaming content. Get down in the comments. Let us know if we made any mistakes. Ask us our questions. We're always super hyped to get in the comments there. And we will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.
Bye.